So welcome, everybody. Good evening, and thank you for taking time out on a beautiful fall evening to spend some time with us and think back on the summer. My name is Cate Reed. I'm the Executive Director of Student Support Services in Pittsburgh Public Schools. And as you probably were expecting, Dr. Lane up here, and she sends her regrets. She was on her way back. She was actually invited by Secretary Duncan to speak in Puerto Rico with the head of our union, Nina Esposito Viscaitis, and on their way back, their plane was diverted because of someone who had a medical emergency on the plane. And so she's now at JFK Airport, but she will be back shortly, but unfortunately not in time for the panel. So I have been asked to try to fill her shoes, which is certainly no easy task, but we are excited to have you here this evening. And I just did want to share a few remarks that she sent to me and asked me to share with the group before we jump in. I'm just going to pull this up. So she wanted to send her thanks to those of you that joined us, as well as those of you that have worked so hard to see Summer Dreamers be as successful as it has been the past 2 years. Without the support of many of the people in this room, we would not be here today. And we'd specifically like to thank our local foundation community, both Grable, the Heinz Endowments, and the Pittsburgh Foundation for supporting us in year 1 and year 2. And we are very thankful for the Wallace Foundation for co-sponsoring this event this evening and coming out to share with you as well their vision around summer learning in the district. And we also can't fail to acknowledge the work of our former superintendent, Mark Roosevelt, who had a vision for what summer could be for our students and really went about finding an exceptional team of folks, many of whom are here this evening: Eddie Wilson, Tanya Graham, Christine Cray, and now Mercedes Housey, who's joined the team, for all of their hard work. We must take a moment to thank them. There is a myriad of little details that go into the execution. We won't talk about those this evening, but I'm sure you all can imagine what it means to feed and transport and educate and give a good time to 5,400 children for 5 weeks. It is not a small undertaking. And I'd like to quickly introduce 2 of our students that are just going to share a couple words about their experience this summer before we dive into the program. So could you please join us, 2 Kappa students? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dustin Matoriak. I am 14 years old, and I go to
You want the mic? Okay, sorry.
Hello again. I'm Dustin Matoriak. I'm 14 years old. I go to Pittsburgh Kappa 6 through 12 right here, and I participated in Summer Dreamers for 2 years, which is for 2 years. I participated in the Youth Cycling Positive Spin program for both of the years that I went to Summer Dreamers, and it was very great. We built a bike and then rode 100 miles to camp overnight at a campsite. So that was very, very amazing. It made my whole summer, and it was just extremely great.
Hi, my name is Maylin Smith, and I go to Kappa 6 through 12 also, and I'm 13 years old, and I was in the Summer Dreamers Academy for 2 years, and it was really cool. I liked it. I was in my morning activity was art activism, and that was really nice because at the end of the summer we performed in the Peace Rally, and that was really cool because there was a lot of dancing and singing and just a lot of fun. Yeah, and I was also in the youth cycling program, and that was really fun too. Oh, and this is a small video from Summer Dreamers.
So we're here on the first day, we're ready to go outside, get campers pumped up. We just wanted to feel more like camp and less like school, so this is a great way to do it.
With Word Warrior, we're learning the words, we're learning the definitions, and we're doing that through various activities.
When I was in 4th grade, my vocabulary part of the test was around basic.
What about now?
Now I have more better understanding my vocabulary words.
I got to learn new words like insist, fortunate, and obnoxious, annoying, urgent, and stuff like that. And they're good words to use, and I try and use them when I'm out of school and sometimes when I'm in school. And when I do use them in school, I get promise tickets.
If you don't have the skills that you need to get the good grades, you're going to get them at Summer Dreamers.
That gives you a chance to work towards the promise. It gives you a chance to work towards college. It gives you a chance to grow up and be somebody and do something and have a college degree to do it with.
We found a lot of these students are already doing this at home or somewhere where they can't be seen. And we want people to see them. We want people to see their gifts and their talents and abilities, and we want them to use their gifts to do something and to give back to their peers. And so since hip hop has such a major influence on youth across the country and even in other countries, we felt like it was a great way for students to communicate to other students about positive mental and physical health and just making the right decisions and doing the right thing, you know.
Summer Dreamers were to continue this year in and year out. I believe that the PSA scores will actually go up. I think students will continue to learn, and I just think it will be a really good overall process that needs to continue for our students.
So hopefully that's a nice introduction for those of you that maybe didn't have a chance to visit a Summer Dreamers site to see a little bit what it looked like. And I want to take a moment to introduce our moderator for this evening, someone who has been a real champion for the children of the city of Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh Public Schools, and all of the work we do, and we are very thankful he's here this evening. Robert Nelkin, the president and CPO of the Allegheny County United Way. So thank you for being here.
Now to Wendy, who used to work for me, she would call me 3CPO. Means Chief Professional Officer. It was her joke. She loved it. Anyhow, when we were talking about Summer Dreamers and then there were the pictures of the Pittsburgh Pirates, you know, I was thinking, come on, those are Summer Dreamers, right?
But we try.
We have season ticket holders here. But Bill Eisler, my good friend, knows that my experience with the Pittsburgh Public Schools, and I was a Pittsburgh Public Schools student during the summer, was it was something like Summer Dreamers, but it was called summer school. And it wasn't voluntary, but I had a great experience in the Pittsburgh Public Schools and as a kid growing up in the city, and I knew from an early age I wanted to be an advocate for our children, and I've been blessed to have a career as an advocate. I think our United Way is, and all of our nonprofit organizations who are our partners are very fortunate to have a role to play in kids' lives and to help them develop to their fullest. And as many great things as we've done, you have to look at the data, you have to look at things happening to our kids today and say, we can do a lot better, we better do a lot better. So my purpose today, and I hope your purpose in this next hour, and we will end exactly an hour from now at 7:30. The purpose in my mind is to be a little bit more informed when we leave, even if we're very passionate, to be a little bit more passionate when we leave. And I think to grapple with some of the problems that we still have to make sure that the summer experiences for our kids help them to be successful in school, you know, in life. So I think that you've heard some about our panel. I'm going to ask them a few questions. I'm going to ask them to be very brief in the answers, at least to the first one. But just your title and what you actually do.
I'm Ann Stone. I'm Senior Research and Evaluation Officer at the Wallace Foundation.
I'm Catherine Augustine, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst at the RAND Corporation.
Hi, I'm Gregg Behr. I'm the Executive Director of the Grable Foundation.
Cate Reed, Executive Director of Student Services at Pittsburgh Public Schools.
All right, that was pretty straight. So now let's get to, how did you spend your summers? Ann?
Well, I guess the most memorable experience I have from summer was day camp. And I remember it fondly.
And you did that during elementary school?
Mainly elementary school. I was a camp counselor when I got older. That was a little bit more challenging fun but challenging. The kids didn't always listen to me.
Catherine? Catherine?
Well, Bob asked me in the foyer if there was anything I did in the summer that really foretold what I would end up doing in life as a researcher, which made me remember that when my friends would come over in the summer, I would make them fill out surveys on what they wanted to do. So,
Catherine, I'm sorry, some of the people in the back couldn't hear that. Would you repeat that?
I would have on the surveys, we could collect frogs, we could look for snakes, we could play dolls. You know, I'd make a pretty exhaustive list, but then they had to rank order, and then we had to figure out how much time we could allocate to each activity. So Marge commented that I probably didn't have a lot of friends left over by the end of the summer, but I did become a researcher. So.
That's so great.
And Greg, you went to Duke during the summer?
I did not. I actually remember mostly just days outdoors and running and playing through the woods and almost, pretending we were explorers and building fortresses and nights of endless flashlight tag. There was a lot of time outside.
How do you play that?
How do you play flashlight tag?
Yeah.
So everyone knows, right? Is this a joke?
No. Don't you want to hear about how to play flashlight tag? Come on, shake your head.
It's really, really simple, right? The guy who's the seeker has the flashlight, and you'd run all over the neighborhood, and you'd dive under crown vetch and up in trees and behind sheds, and it was nighttime hide and seek.
You parents and grandparents of young children, you got a new game, to teach them. This is pretty cool. Kate?
I would say 3 distinct things. We started off, we would go to the beach as a family for 1 week. We would drive to the Jersey Shore, and we had to go in early June, right after school let out, because that meant it was less crowded. And my mom liked that, but it was freezing, and I remember that. In the water, you couldn't even get in the water, but we were at the beach. And then I was on the local swim club, had a swim team. And so every morning I went up and went to the pool and swim practice, and then we would spend the rest of the day at the pool, similarly, just running around, having fun, and then the pool actually had a library above it, strangely enough. And so at the end of the day, we would go to the library and get books, and then we would read most night. So that was sort of the same, and then it was just repeat the next day for about 10 weeks. It was great.
So Catherine already led into this, but let me ask the other 3 panelists, what is it that you did during your summer that had any impact on where you've gone with your life and your career?
Well, this wasn't at camp, but it was at home. My family, especially my father, was always really interested in art. And so every Sunday morning after breakfast, we would, my brother and I would sit on either side of my father on the couch, and he'd open up a big art book, and we'd go through the pages and notice different things about the pictures. And fast forward, when I was doing some research of my own and needed to figure out what I wanted to focus on for my doctoral dissertation, I decided to focus on the arts. So that, my father said that he was to blame for that because he thought that was very impractical, but it turned out okay.
Okay, Greg, and I'd love for you to make the connection between flashlight tag and what you've done with your life. Or anything else from your
20 words or less. So I used the word explorer. I mean, we really did go into the woods as if we were exploring new places and new lands. And I think that contributed to a personality trait that I hope is curious and that is always looking to do what we do and do it better. And in the case of the Grable Foundation, that's serving kids and the people who serve kids and trying to do that better. So I think in retrospect, it probably contributed to a curiosity.
Kate?
I can say that as I got to high school, my parents insisted that we have to have summer jobs, and I was a city parks lifeguard, and I loved that job, and I did it for 4 years in high school, and it actually was exactly what spurred in me an interest in wanting to work in the public schools and wanting to go out and actually work in low-income communities and try to make a difference and do good work. So I directly link my summer job that I had when I was 15 to what I do today, and I still do that in job interviews to this day. I think it was the turning point for me in my life. So it wasn't necessarily when I was little, but it certainly was a dramatic influence on what I ended up doing.
The aha moment in all the responses I've heard so far is that there was something that was a deep interest, or that the kids developed this deep interest that they wanted to do during the summer, that they thought it was really cool, and it turned out to be very constructive activity. Marge and I were with a pretty world-renowned researcher this morning, and we were talking about how to have healthy children and reduce the risk for childhood obesity. And a major point that he made, whether he's right or not, I don't know, but a major point that he made was it's very important for kids to have something that they're very interested in that will make them active, that will give them an opportunity to be active. And I think we heard that from everyone's story as well. We were also, some of us in the room were at a seminar of Let's Move Pittsburgh last Wednesday. And one of the fascinating pieces of information from the economist, and her name was Economist, from Tufts University, was that she showed her chart about how they had improvement in children's health indicators. Then during the summer, that dropped. So, there's or reverse, there was a weight gain during the summer. And to some of us, and definitely to me, that was counterintuitive. You mean during the summer, when kids are supposed to be outside, when they're supposed to be very active, they were less active, they were consuming more calories, they were gaining more weight. And so I think there's a lot that we have to explore about how our kids actually do engage in the summer. And you're shaking your head. You're the expert and you're shaking your head. We've got to find ways that are unique for our kids to get involved in. So my next question for the panelists is really about the passion that you have about summer learning. Why are you so passionate about summer learning? Catherine?
Well, for me, the data are just really clear that summer learning loss is not only a problem, but that it disproportionately affects low-income kids. So if you think about your own children and your own experiences, you all and they probably lose some ground in math over the summer. And we see that across the board, regardless of a child's background. But when it comes to reading and literacy skills, low-income kids are much more likely to lose ground over the summer. And that loss is cumulative. So we know that low-income kids start disadvantaged in kindergarten, right? And then each summer, they're falling behind. So even though they learn at the same rate during the school year, each summer puts them further and further behind. And there was a longitudinal study done in Baltimore that concluded that in 9th grade, the achievement gap between low-income and higher-income kids that we see, that 2/3 of that was attributed by these researchers to the summer problem, to summer learning loss that happened each summer. So as I learned more about summer learning loss and how it disproportionately affects low-income kids, I became very passionate about it.
Before we move to the passion of the others, a follow-up question for you. Is there any difference between boys and girls in terms of the loss rate during the summer?
No. Mm-mm.
Not at all.
Nope.
Ann, why are you passionate about summer learning?
I'm passionate because I became familiar with the research that Catherine is talking about, and as a funder who looks to try to find opportunities to make a difference, you rarely have such a clear definition of the problem that almost begs for a solution. And so for us at the Wallace Foundation to be able to see that there is this really well-documented problem of summer learning loss. And then we were able to commission RAND to do some additional research to say, okay, we know that there's a problem, that there's summer learning loss. Can summer programs actually make a difference and mitigate that loss? And what they were able to find is that, yes, there have been very rigorous studies that have shown that kids can actually benefit and not only not lose academically over the summer, but even have gains. And so those are mainly short-term studies. We don't know all the answers yet, but to have that kind of promise and feel like that's there for the kids to have, it's so motivating to be a funder and be able to have the resources of our foundation and to be able to partner with communities around the country like Pittsburgh to actually really demonstrate what's possible and then have this potentially become a core strategy for district leaders who are really searching for how you make a difference in the achievement gap.
That's good. And we're very appreciative of your support of Pittsburgh in that regard. Gregg?
So I'll simply underscore my colleagues here, because what we heard was evidence and we heard opportunity. And in public policy work, whether that's as a school administrator, it's as a government official, a United Way official, someone who works in philanthropy, there are only so many levers that you can pull to support families and caregivers as they raise children. And what do we know works? We know that outstanding high-quality early childhood education works. We know effective teaching works. We now know from good research and data that outstanding, engaging summer learning works, and that it can actually help us address the nagging achievement gap problem. So why wouldn't we try and provide remarkable learning experiences in that out-of-school time for our children? So it's evidence tied with opportunity.
Cate?
Well, Dr. Lane actually shared some of her thoughts on this question, and I thought they're worth noting. She said, basically, we're in this business because we believe teaching results in learning. And if we don't believe that, then ultimately it's not entirely clear why we'd be here. So if we believe that teaching results in learning, then the more teaching our children can be exposed to, the better off they are, and the better quality teaching they get, significantly better off they are. And so therefore this idea that as a school district, we believe that the more teaching our children, quality, excellent teaching they can be exposed to, the better off they're going to be. And she also shared an anecdote, but I have essentially the same one. I used to teach 3rd and 4th grade, but I looped with my kids from 3rd to 4th one year, and I left at the end of 3rd grade thinking I spent the whole summer planning because I had had them the year before. I knew exactly where they were, and we came on the first day of 4th grade, and I was ready to just hit the ground running, and they looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You were here 2 months ago," and I had taught the exact same children, and we were not ready to start. And to me, that was 10 years ago, and that for me was a huge light bulb moment of, uh-oh. I mean, next summer we got to make sure you guys have a plan, because this is not, this is not good. So I think that's really why we value it as a school district very deeply.
So switching a little bit, I spent a lot of my career in government or trying to influence government on behalf of children, and we've had periods where we've, grown and been able to expand programs, but definitely now we're in a period where there's a contraction of programs. And during this period, we still have a commitment by the Pittsburgh Public Schools to summer learning, and so this is directed to you, Cate. Why, with all the scarce resources, why are you devoting these resources to summer learning?
Well, it sort of comes back to my previous answer. We believe that this is important. We believe, to Gregg's point, that this is one of those key levers that will result in student achievement. It is getting tougher, and I think we all know that. In this budget climate, it is significantly more difficult to do a lot of the things, even those things we know have huge return on investment. But ultimately, in this current budget climate, we've decided that we will put aside funds to continue to do this program for children, because we are seeing results, we're seeing engagement. If you saw those posters out in the hallway, you see the survey results, what kids are saying about their experience, and we are starting to see that kids, we hear from teachers in surveys that kids were coming back more prepared to learn. They could see a difference in the children that had gone through Summer Dreamers. So for us, we really, in tough economic times, perhaps all the time, but certainly in tough economic times, you have to look at your return on your investment. And if you're putting dollars in and those dollars are resulting in achievement for kids, you have to find a way to keep doing it.
So let me just a quick follow-up with you. If you were talking to a legislator, you've just made the argument that you have to invest, what's the return going to be?
Well, I think our belief is that the return will be that over time, it's all about the allocation of resources. So if we can get kids, to Catherine's point, to come back more ready to learn, we're going to have to, over time, spend fewer dollars on remediation. We're going to have to spend fewer dollars on trying to get kids caught up. So perhaps in the short term, we're putting it in both, but over time, we hope that those dollars are going disproportionately toward enrichment, advancement, opportunities for students, unless we're having to divert toward having to get students caught up. And I think we will see over time that that would play itself out, and that would certainly be something I hope people would believe, and that hopefully the research will start to support as well.
We're going to need all those compelling arguments. So we have some school board members here from the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Would you stand up? And let's thank them for supporting the summer learning program. Thank you during these scarce and tough economic times for making these tough decisions. Really appreciate it. So Catherine, back to you. You talked a little bit about your research. Could you tell us a little bit more in terms of the risks and take us a step deeper into what the risks are and how
Sure.
summer learning can overcome them?
Well, I'd like to say something about what makes for a quality experience and a quality program. Not all summer programs result in students having gained or stemmed loss. One of the things that's really important is that students attend the programs. There's not a Hawthorne effect, like if a kid is admitted into a program, they're going to do better just because a light has been shown on them. They actually need to attend and engage, and ideally then they would be presented with curriculum that's targeted toward their learning needs and presented by really qualified and motivated teachers who want to be there. They're not just picking up a summer paycheck, but they want to be working with the kids. And ideally the classroom experience is different from what it is during the school year in that the class sizes are smaller, so teachers can engage individually with students. And so I think there are a lot of ingredients that go into making an effective summer program. And so one of the reasons why Wallace was so excited about investing in Pittsburgh is that it evidenced a lot of those ingredients. The Summer Dreamers program did and continues to do so. So as you're thinking about, well, gee, what does a summer program look like? Do note that not all summer experiences are going to lead to gains, but those that combine those key ingredients should.
So a follow-up question for you. You mentioned attendance being important, and if you could point out for us what you think some of the great competing attractions are during the summer, and what it is about successful summer learning programs that draw the kids into the summer learning and away from these other attractions.
Sure. Well, I think one of the toughest things to overcome is our own cultural beliefs about what should happen in the summer. I think that it's tough to get parents of any income level to value sending their kid regularly and consistently to anything that looks or smells like school during the summer. And so a lot of parents who send their child to a summer program, whether it's in Pittsburgh or anywhere else, feel completely comfortable pulling them out for a week to send them to a YMCA camp or a baseball camp. So getting parents to understand that their child is only going to benefit if they're consistently attending is a real challenge. And that's a challenge everywhere. So what engages kids and what Pittsburgh does really well is by bringing in these external partners. So it's not like the old-fashioned kind of summer school where you're sitting in a room with a teacher droning on for 6 hours. You're experiencing academics, but then you're also getting to what the kids call the fun part. You're building a bicycle and then cycling 100 miles at the end of the summer. You're engaging in the arts. You're doing things that these children might not otherwise have an opportunity to do over the summer. So the programs are aimed at not only overcoming the achievement gap, but also the opportunity gap. And so that's, in theory, what makes the kids come back every day. They look forward to that afternoon activity and bond with the providers of it, and it makes the experience something that they look forward to and want to attend regularly.
Cate, same question, but from the school district's point of view, same answer, different answer, anything you want to edify about it?
I think there are other things that are happening in the summer that are tough for kids to want not to participate in. I mean, obviously, we hear about Boy Scout camp and, again, YMCA or swim clubs. But I think the other big thing around attendance is getting kids to basically get hooked on something. I mean, that was something that our former superintendent talked a lot about, this idea that you have to be passionate about doing something really well, and that if you feel as though there's a culminating piece to the end of the summer, so the peace rally that our student discussed, if you feel like you're working towards something, that incentive to want to come back every day is going to grow. I feel like every day you're doing something really discreet, and who knows what I'm doing tomorrow, so I'm not sure that I'll go, you're less likely to come. So that's why we really built in that component of a culminating project, so kids felt as though they were really moving towards something. That missing a day was bad. You were letting down your classmates, your teammates, other people that were counting on you to help make that final presentation or performance or 100-mile bike ride, if that sounds like fun to you. Not to me. That they're counting on you.
I mean, I look at what each of you said about your summer experiences when you were growing up. I heard from our two students, from Kappa. heard from the researcher this morning about how important it is to have something that you can be passionate about, and now I hear that the district organized it that way. That just seems to be like a very powerful, element of that. In regards to that, how exactly did you organize the program? What do you think the key elements of success were?
Well, the program was really designed, it has evolved over time. I mean, one thing we take very seriously and why we're excited to work with Wallace and Rand is because we think that the feedback we get to make changes is really what's going to benefit our students. So this past summer, the basic model, we expanded to K to 8. You had both math and literacy in the morning. But it was designed, Tanya Graham worked diligently with the curriculum folks to design games and activities and things that you weren't just sitting down the whole day. You were moving around, you were learning. Certainly, I think kids would still say at times it felt like school, but it certainly didn't feel like the type of school necessarily that they saw from September through June. And then they had an activity that they were able to choose. And I think choice is a really key component. When you heard our 4 experiences, they were different experiences. I would not have necessarily chosen to play flashlight tag, but all others people probably wouldn't have joined a swim team. And it's important for kids to feel like they could pick what they wanted to do. So they did that in the afternoons while working toward the culminating project. The other great thing about the way we designed our program was we partnered with over 50 community organizations throughout the city, because I'm not an expert in fencing. No one who works at Belfield Avenue is an expert in fencing. People that do Three Rivers fencing know fencing really well, and so we should work with Three Rivers fencing. So this idea that we would work with students to help them pick the thing that they're excited about. And then they also received Promise dollars. They had folks from the Pittsburgh Promise come in and do presentations for them. They were able to buy college gear at the Promise store. They did field trips to the aviary, the zoo, and other really exciting places. So we really wanted kids to feel like they were going to camp. And along the way, without noticing it, they were ramping up their skills they would need to go back to school that September.
Cate, I think I probably would dispute your claim that no one on Belfield Avenue does fencing. I've watched the school board and the superintendent. Like any public body, there was some fencing going on. So, I've also observed through the years a lot of change between the school district and the community. A lot of us walked to school. And when we attended the Pittsburgh Public Schools, we didn't have security systems to go through. You didn't have to do background checks to be a parent volunteer and an FBI fingerprinting. It seems like we've had a lot of barriers, a lot of challenges to the community and the schools, working together. So, and ask Gregg, I think, talk about the relationship between the schools and the community partners.
Well, to the point that you just made, part of my colleague Deanne says sometimes rules are for fools, right? So we've got to figure out how do we accommodate the rules but work around them in a way that's most supportive of kids. And I think that's what you're seeing in this community. Cate just a moment ago mentioned the Pittsburgh Promise. It took us a while to mention the Pittsburgh Promise in this conversation, but if you think about it, this community has made a remarkable commitment to every kid in this community with the Pittsburgh Promise. And our commitment now to summer learning is one of the tools by which we can help kids become Promise ready. And so the remarkable role of local nonprofits in contributing their skill, their talent in helping kids find that passion and to contribute to their learning is a critical element of becoming Promise ready. And it's thus incumbent upon the school district to find ways to work very smartly with its community nonprofit partners, and similarly for community nonprofits to figure out how to smartly work with the school district with all that they're up against as well. And we're seeing this in summer learning. We're seeing it in data sharing now between Department of Human Services and the Pittsburgh Public Schools. We see it in the early childhood field. We see it in the work that Holly does in after school. I think we're seeing a real moment in this community where you truly have an alignment between community leadership, school leadership, community organizations, teachers in the classroom.
I was reflecting on your answer, Gregg, and you're talking about a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of very significant steps that overcame barriers. You think about just the sharing of data. Mm-hmm. I remember when that first came up, the lawyers from both sides, thought, we're going to have a field day with this. But, it got worked out. But what is it about the relationship between Pittsburgh Public Schools and the community partners that is allowing for these breakthroughs? Because the same questions have been coming up at other districts, and they're not getting that positive, progressive answer. So help us understand what that critical element is, because we got to keep it and build upon it.
I don't know that there's any magic solution. We look for in our children and look to build the trait of resilience. And to me, there's an element of resilience in the community partnerships. It's persistence. It's not sexy, fun work sometimes. It's tedious, fisticuffs, let's figure this out. But if we can maintain that orientation, as Fred Rogers said, to think of the children first, we can achieve those things and figure out where the rules are, in fact, inhibitive of that work, where Title I might be inhibiting Cate, whatever it might be, to figure out how smartly to serve the kids. And I think it's persistence, it's leadership, it's not being personal about the work, but being focused on the kids first.
I think it goes beyond that, and that's something we ought to all explore together and figure out, what are these elements that really allow us to make breakthrough, progress. I think it's the things that you mentioned, but I think it's also some other things, including some great champions who stand up at whatever risk. So,
and to that point,
Sure.
we identified the 3 board members, and I feel like we can't identify the school board enough because it takes truly courageous decisions. Being a school board member and being a superintendent, I've decided, are the most thankless jobs in all of America. And it is hard work to face what they collectively face as a leadership body, and it really does take people in public settings taking courageous decisions.
Can I just say something
Yeah,
on this?
jump in.
Because there were only 6 school districts in the entire nation that were selected to participate in this initiative that we're supporting. And we did a nationwide search, and we employed a firm to look at urban school districts across the country to identify those who had already recognized that summer learning should be a priority. Because we didn't want to come in as a sort of outside funder and say,
We've had that happen before.
Would you be willing to do this if we pay for it? We wanted to find folks who already had made the commitment, where they already had programs that were putting in place a lot of the elements that we know are really important, that have vigorous community partners. We heard about all the nonprofits, and that have local funders who are working together to support these priorities. So for us, that really told us this is something that the local community believes in, that they're putting their scarce resources, they're putting their human capital into this. And for us, it was a wonderful opportunity and really an honor and a privilege for us to be able to support your work and then hopefully add to it and build some greater learning. One of the things we were talking, you were noting earlier, was that sort of in these tough financial times, how do you really justify putting scarce dollars into summer programs when there's so many other needs? That's a really important question, and one thing we want to do with this initiative, because it's a long-term initiative, is be able to build an even stronger evidence base that really demonstrates what urban school districts with all their challenges can actually do if they put their minds to delivering summer learning programs. Can you actually eliminate summer learning loss and produce gains? And we feel that in partnering with Pittsburgh, we have an opportunity to really demonstrate something that not only can be helpful here, but really can help the entire nation, who have millions of children who really could benefit from summer learning programs.
So, Ann, you mentioned the initiative, so let me ask you about Wallace and its initiative. What is it? How much money and why? What's driving it?
Right.
And also, how is it going so far?
Well, first of all, why? We're making this investment because we actually believe that summer learning loss is a solvable problem, but it just needs to be tackled in a big way. And so our initiative, which was announced in July, involves 6 school districts across the country, and we're going to be helping them strengthen their programs over a period of a couple years so they can put in place some of what the existing research base already says is associated with strong programs. Once those enhancements are in place, then we're going to evaluate the results. And with the evaluation, what we aim to do is strengthen the evidence that already exists about the promise and value of summer learning, and actually test this question that I mentioned. Can urban school districts, not just small programs here and there, but urban school districts that have a lot of challenges, can they actually mount summer programs at a significant scale and make a real dent in this academic achievement gap that is so persistent? And if those answers turn out to be yes, we don't know yet, but if they turn out to be yes, we think that will be very compelling for school leaders who need to think about return on investment. And we feel like that can be a contribution that will be really lasting across the nation. You asked how it's going. So it started just in July, and one thing that Cate referenced is that this summer, Catherine and her other colleagues at Rand, and we have a couple other in the audience, spent time in each of the six school districts. They looked at the curriculum, teacher training, attendance patterns. They surveyed parents and students to really try to get an understanding of where are their strengths, where's there room for improvement. And Pittsburgh and the other 5 districts they all signed up for this bargain of getting this, a little bit of maybe a cold shower sometimes of things that need improvement, but if you're thinking about the kids, you want to know. And so we're just getting to the point. Rand is crunching all the numbers and getting to the point of being able to share that with the districts, and then we'll be entering with them a number of discussions and a planning process. Which of these areas that could benefit from strengthening would you be willing to take on? And what would you need in order to do it? And how can we be helpful in providing financial support, in providing technical assistance, and what other local community resources can be brought to bear to help make these improvements so we have the strongest programs in place by the time we do this rigorous evaluation that starts in summer of 2013.
So Catherine, there's certainly some skeptical superintendents and school boards throughout, the country, and what are some of their reasons for not instituting something like this, and what are some of the compelling arguments that you think might come out of this that would help them?
Well, the biggest barrier is certainly the program's cost. It's less expensive to educate a student for a week in the summer than it is to educate them for a week in the school year, but it's still a significant cost. And most superintendents are tasked with educating students for 180 days a year or whatever it is in their his or her given state. So this is an extra cost, an extra burden for superintendents and school districts. And so they want to know what their return on investment is going to be. As Cate talked about and as Anne talked about, they want to know not just are kids going to be better off at the end of the summer, which is well established from prior research, but how are they then going to do on the state tests in the spring? And how are they going to stay in school? Are they going to graduate? What is this program contributing to my, as a superintendent's, goals and to what I'm held accountable for? And so we're hoping that by doing this research on a large scale with 6 districts and following these kids over time, we can quantify those answers better for superintendents and say, look, if you have a program with these ingredients, this is how your kids will do on the state tests in the spring, and this is how much more likely they would be to stay in school and to eventually graduate. So we don't have those answers now. Right now we know the potential of these programs. I fully believe that kids who attend these programs are better off than kids who don't. And there's plenty of evidence for that. But whether or not that evidence is compelling enough for a superintendent to invest in these programs, that's an open question, and it's apparent from what's happening across the country that not all superintendents believe the evidence is strong enough yet.
So Cate, some of the challenges locally.
Well, there are some of the challenges you can imagine. Recruiting students to come, and we talked a little bit about attendance. I think that'll always be a challenge. Our program, and I think we talked about this a little earlier when we met with Ann and Catherine, a lot of programs in this country are mandated. You have to go to be promoted to the next grade. We are not. We are a fully voluntary program. That is a very different message to a child than being told, if you don't come, you don't go to 4th grade. We don't say that, and we have decisions for why we say it that way, and I feel good about those decisions. It still changes the culture of a child who's thinking, do I want to get out of bed on this beautiful summer morning and get up and go do reading for even a little bit? So that's one of the challenges. There are little things. I mean, clearly, the heat this past summer was not a very good thing.
I see some heads shaking.
Yes, we had 4 unair-conditioned sites. We had so many kids, which was great. We had to add sites. Positive. Negative. Those sites we had to add did not have air conditioning. And it was pretty brutal for both kids and staff. Maybe more for staff because, kids were outside playing and staff were not used to that. I think the other thing is the constant challenge of we want to do as much great and innovative and interesting stuff with our kids as we can, but, and I hate to keep going back to it, the finances of it are challenging, and so we really did have to think about where are we going to invest those dollars and how can we get the best experience for kids without going over the top when we know that we have to be very careful with every dollar we spend. And I think that's an ongoing challenge, even down to the fact that when we lost a full-time team member, we simply just didn't replace them, because to us it was better for us to have those dollars go into classrooms with kids, even if it meant a little bit more work on the other end. So, those are some of the things that we struggle with. I guess I should mention one more, which is I think this parent piece is getting families. We had significantly higher attendance at our parent orientations this year, which was wonderful. But I think there is still a little bit of skepticism on the part of parents about how this fits into their child's overall academic experience and the benefits that it'll bring.
So in about 2 minutes, we'll open it up and get some questions and comments. But Gregg, how should the community respond to some of these challenges that Cate just talked about?
Well, we should respond by supporting Summer Dreamers, among other things. Yeah. Do your cheer. I mean, the thing
That's
is...
the shortest answer you ever gave.
A number of folks have used the phrase return on investment. And truly, given the investments we've made in the Pittsburgh Promise, given the investments the school district is making every day in outstanding education in the classrooms. And we know that kids of all demographic types are achieving during the course of the year. Given the investments we're making in early childhood, why wouldn't we want to make this sort of investment in the summertime to complete our whole child education and make sure that kids are Promise ready? It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. Because the alternative is, given that we now know that data shows the compounding effect of summer learning loss, either we need to start discounting our expectations of school districts and judge them not on a yearly basis, but on every 9 months and discount. Or if we're really going to judge schools and teachers on performance on a year-long basis, then we need to make the public policy decision to invest in our teachers and the schools on a year-long basis.
And Catherine, you want to add to advice to the community about responding to these challenges that the Pittsburgh district has?
Wow, it's hard to top Gregg on that. I guess I would just say that we feel that there aren't that many interventions in public education where you have really promising early evidence and you can really feel that this is worth exploring further. And I know we at Wallace felt that way and feel that there's a real compelling argument for local communities who have already recognized the importance of this to go further and get the tests that we need to really see if, as Catherine said, that this is going to turn into long-lasting gain. So I think it's maybe keeping the eye on the prize and realizing that times are tough now, but when you need to decide what to cut back on, think about what you feel has a lot of potential. And it's every community's own decision on what that is. I can say that we feel at Wallace that this is where we want to put our scarce resources, because we think it has so much potential for kids who really deserve to have an education that really helps them.
Catherine, any advice for the? Go ahead, Greg.
I just want I also think it's important to say, Ann just noted, times are tough. Times in some ways are always going to be tough. There are just always thorny problems with which we're going to be working. But, for kids, they get, or they should get, one shot at second grade. They get one shot at seventh grade. So it's just, so why punish them because of life circumstances and timing into which they happen to be born? To not make that investment when the kids have their one shot is immoral.
Catherine?
That's a tough set of words to follow.
I was wondering how you were going to do it.
I'll follow it with humor. I would just tell community members who are interested in what's happening in a summer program, in Summer Dreamers specifically, not to second guess the motivation of the adults involved in the program. I expected to see a lot more complaining, a lot, the heat and logistical problems, et cetera. And from Eddie and Tanya and Christine to the people who were running these campsites to the teachers, they were really there for the kids and the activity providers. I witnessed meetings where an activity provider said, okay, here's my schedule, and the campsite leader said, oh, no, you're going to have to change all of that. And I expected the activity provider to be frustrated or to walk away, and they didn't. They said, okay, we'll change it. Everybody was there for the kids, and so I know that when you think about a school district, you often think about the bureaucracy and how stifling it can be. And this program, the adults in this program, were there for the kids.
Talk about the student data, that they like the program.
And the students like the program too.
And they actually
said the woman from Rand.
Right. And
it must be true.
She got to put her survey skills to work that she developed as a 7-year-old. But that actually was something that we didn't know what we would find, because there is a significant academic component. That's serious. And I think it was really a pretty resounding response from the kids, that they were happy and engaged.
Yep, and we observed that as well. And as you saw from the two, the young man and young woman who are here, they really did enjoy it and were happy and
So let's engage you. Back to my opening. I think we wanted to learn something. We wanted to be even more passionate leaving here, and we wanted to grapple with some of our challenges. So, Ebony, do we have a microphone? Who wants to go first? We have some great minds in this room, some passionate people. Let's turn the microphone on first. Okay, I'm going to call names. Yeah. James, go ahead.
I'll just do this without the mic. How do we take some of the lessons that you learned in Summer Dreamers and apply them during the school year? From what you've learned about caring for kids. There's a lot of things mentioned that seemed like, wow, everyone's there for the kids. That there's just a lot of potential lessons that we can, and how you partner with the community. It seems like it's more complicated in the summer, but I know it's complicated during the year. How do we learn?
It's long. Let's repeat it.
All right. So, short version, how do we take the learning from Summer Dreamers and apply it during the school year, and what lessons can improve learning and the experience for kids in all of Pittsburgh Public Schools?
Okay, they're looking at each other.
Well, I can just very quickly speak. We were very lucky that we had so many of our students that participated in the program, and therefore we had a lot of our teachers who participated as well. And so I think some of the things, and again, this is more anecdotal than anything else, but I actually spoke to a couple teachers who said to me that they came back with a whole new host of ideas about how they might want to approach, because I mean, here's the dirty little secret, right? Every skill they did in the summer was actually eligible content from the PSSAs, right? And we just did it differently. And Tanya developed the curriculum differently, but they were still doing the stuff that students had struggled with on the standardized test. And so teachers would say to me, I went back and had this whole new set of tools in my tool belt that I could use to teach the content that I knew was really important for my students. So I think actually it's less about maybe what I do or what we do in our office as much as it is our cohort of teachers that come back to the classroom with some new ideas and a new and I'm sort of looking at Marla up front because I know she's one of our teachers, who come back with sort of a new vision for how they might approach their learning during the school year.
And it extends beyond the teachers too then, right? Because learning happens anytime, anywhere. So the work that Phil's doing at MGR, the work that Esther's doing in the Urban League, the work that Larry's doing, the Saturday Light Brigade, Lisa at Gateway to the Arts, kids spend upwards of 80% of their waking hours outside of a school building. And so the more that we can take learning and evidence from an outstanding program like this and apply it in those out-of-school learning environments, in churches, even in homes, we are going to equip the kids better to succeed and find their passions.
Okay, we have a school board member here. You know how to use a mic.
To that point that Gregg made, I wanted to ask Catherine Ann in particular about your research studies on summer learning. If you could talk more about the value of other experiences and scaffolding, that extend learning and provide more exposures for young people, because we know that exposures provide context for learning, and particularly at the high school level, as there are internship experiences and other opportunities to get involved that aren't strictly academic, but in terms of the experience that's provided and whether that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult to quantify some of those experiences and necessarily tie them to academic outcomes, but there have been some really interesting studies that have looked at a variety of programs that young kids have gotten involved with and followed those kids over time. And in some cases, what the content of that program hasn't mattered, which is fascinating to me. If you're getting a kid hooked on something that turns into a lifelong passion from an early age, there are examples of that program being a sport. There are examples of that program being an art. But having something that engages the kid and provides, like you said, a different context for learning has proven in a number of studies to lead to more positive outcomes in terms of persistence through school, graduation, college attendance, etc. And one of the things that some of the teachers in these programs across the country commented on was that one of the things these programs do is they just continue a habit of learning. So the kids are accustomed to going into the school, to being in a learning situation, both during the academic portion, but also during the enrichment portion. They're socializing with other children. They're continuing to interact with adults and sometimes developing closer relationships with the adults because there are fewer kids in the classroom competing for the adults' attention. So I think there are a lot of spillover effects from these programs that do lead to improved academic outcomes. So like I said earlier, sometimes it's difficult to quantify exactly what's happening and what's the cause of the effect, but I do believe that providing this exposure to kids is beneficial.
This audience member over here seems like a passionate person.
My question, given what you have said about the loss of learning in the summer, how do you think this impacts what research has proven and what many other countries are doing in terms of an extended school year? Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of education reform. We know that other countries go to school more than 180 days a year. So in general, but specifically, I would like to hear from Rand, but I'm very interested in the opinions of the other three panelists.
Yeah, that's a great question, because obviously extending the school year in general is an alternative to combating summer learning loss, right? And so there is evidence that so doing also combats summer learning loss, which is not surprising, right? It has been shown that in communities that have extended the school year, there's been a lot more pushback than there has to summer learning programs. Middle and upper income parents don't want their kids in school during the summer. Employers of teenagers fight school boards when they try to extend the school year. Recreation, destinations, summer theme parks, etc., they will fight school boards as well. So it's actually been easier for districts to implement summer programs that are either voluntary or targeting kids who need the help the most. And extending the school year tends to be obviously more expensive because you're serving the entire population of kids. So that's another reason why summer programs are sometimes seen as easier to implement by superintendents. But certainly that would be another way of addressing summer learning loss. It also depends on the philosophy of the superintendent or the district. If they want to address the achievement gap within their district, the summer is a good time to really focus on the kids at the lower end of the achievement scale. Versus whether they want to, provide additional services to all kids.
Any other panel members want to address that?
So this is just a personal opinion. I mean, it seems to me there are two things to do. One, it just makes sense to extend the school year. It just makes plain sense when you look at what's happening in places in Scandinavia or in China, and the time on subject matter that kids have available to them and the instruction. At the same time, I think we need to be attentive to that idea that kids learn anytime, anywhere. And so I think we need to rethink libraries, we need to rethink museums, I think we need to rethink who kids are in this digital age and how they use the tools around them to learn. So to me, it's not so much extending learning just in school, it's extending our sensibility of the environments in which kids are always learning and how it truly is different today from just 5 or 10 years ago.
And it's more likely that a school district would be able to provide that opportunity to low-income kids whose families aren't pursuing it on their own.
Thank you very much, and I'm excited to be here this evening. One comment on that, from our experience, though, is that kids who are failing usually will fail if you extend the school year. So they don't like school, they are bullied, or they have other issues that need to be addressed. But my question is, and we talked about this with Eddie over the years, the notion of peers, teens, getting them involved, because we found in our program that we have a whole layer of teenagers, because kids don't listen to parents that much, or adults sometimes, and having a layer of teenagers involved in the summertime, delivering the program, working in counselor roles. Have you looked at that and see what kind of effect that might have on your strategy long term?
We didn't particularly look at the effect that the camp coordinators, some of whom were college students, had on
high school kids.
Did you have any high school kids working?
High school graduates.
High school graduates?
Providers.
Oh, through the providers, right. Right, I mean, that's a great question, and we certainly thought about mentoring and the extent to which kids were getting mentoring from a number of different adults and who the kids were identifying with. We haven't, unfortunately, explored that in any detail, but I think that's certainly a valid hypothesis that the kids might be identifying better with the younger adults and teenagers.
It gives the high school kids something to do as well.
Right.
So maybe time for 2 more questions. I recognize this person over here. I'm still talking to her.
I love you. Just thinking about, well, let me just stop and rephrase. Was it Monday or Friday when we read there was a Huffington Post in education about the cost of educational equity being about $4,230 that would be added in order to provide the myriad of services that children from low-income, underserved communities often need in order to have the similar educational outcomes. So while I think the study is fabulous, and one more piece of data that's really going to prove the impact is important, but anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a patient person, and this might be a Pennsylvania-specific issue because there is some indication from some of our state of less interest in public education kind of solutions to things and looking to alternative types of education systems to make up for the types of gaps that we see in low-income, underserved communities. So while we're doing the study and gathering the information to prove the point unequivocally, or whatever the word is Is there also a strategy to help build that public will, not just among superintendents, but among others who are also making the educational funding decisions?
Well, I'll say a bit about that, because we do agree with you that evidence isn't everything, and there are a lot of other factors that influence decisions, and there's therefore different strategies in addition to doing more good research that are really important. And we have at Wallace a communications department who thinks very strategically about who are some of the decision makers, who are the influencers, in what ways are they impeding certain decisions that might make sense, and what do they need to know, and what would we want them to do, and how do we reach out to them? And so I actually have in the audience my colleague Jessica Schwartz, who leads our strategic communications work for all of our education initiatives. And we have built partnerships with the National Governors Association, the association of state legislators, other kinds of education associations which may not currently be thinking about, in this case, summer learning and its disproportionate effect on low-income kids, but it's part of what we're going to be doing over time, because we're in this for the long haul, of building awareness and making sure that we're not waiting to send a report to someone when it's all done, but really engaging them. First of all, just recognizing the problem. I mean, if you hear about this cumulative effect of summer learning loss and that it affects poor kids, and the problem is so well documented. We still need some more evidence about solutions, but the problem is well documented. Just even getting that out more and challenging people to really think about it is part of the work. So I think we're on the same page with you about the need for that. We love ideas about who are the people who need to be part of this conversation, and since we're going to be involved in Pittsburgh for a while, it would be great to get everyone's thoughts on this really important topic.
I would just well, Greg,
No,
go ahead, Greg,
Greg,
and then I'll conclude.
Well, I just was going to say, so I think probably everyone in this room shares your impatience, but Ann just used that phrase, long haul, and so I think we're in a slog, and I think this evening is a challenge to each of us to be ambassadors for summer learning. Marge Petruska, whom I saw just left a moment ago earlier today, she compared this work to the early childhood work. There was a time, even just 10, 15 years ago, that people talked about early learning as babysitting and thought of it as really soft. I mean, you couldn't even imagine a corporation like PNC making a $250 million investment in early learning. So what is it that we can do to begin to change that communications challenge? That summertime is not about babysitting. It's not summer school. I mean, we've got to counter those cultural notions, those personal experiences we have, because summer learning is now, there's a different opportunity before us. And how among the nonprofit community, the school community, local CEOs and others begin to build that sensibility, knowing the evidence that we have available to build that message. And I think really each of us needs to begin to take that message into the work, to our boards, to wherever it may be.
So as the moderator, I get the last word. I promise to get you out of here exactly at 7:30. It's a promise that I will keep. And I would just add to this last part of the conversation and say there's an audience that we need to address, and that's really the taxpayer and the people who influence our elected officials. If they don't get this argument, if they don't get excited about this and see the value in it at a time when we're contracting resources, not expanding them, they'll notice if we're spending dollars on this. They've got to be convinced. We've got to come up with the arguments for them. And they may be those research documents for some people. It may be the compelling examples that we had here, the two Kappa students, and lots of other students for other individuals. But it's got to be something that the citizens of our country and our community, really respond to. And I think because Pittsburgh is the way it is, Ann, that's probably going to be part of our equation, moving forward. Who would the champions be? who are the people in this room or not in this room that we can engage, who will get very excited about this and, to use Gregg's term, slog, to continually push at this, because it's not going to happen easily. So I think we've had a wonderful evening, a lot of great information, a good amount of passion. We have a great community working together, getting back to that. We have all sorts of breakthroughs. We continue to amaze ourselves in terms of what we're capable of doing. But look, we're not there, and we've got to really work very hard together. I'd like to end the evening by thanking the employees of the district who were part of the Summer Dreamers and also the providers. So if you would stand up, let's applaud your work. Thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists, and Ann, welcome to Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
This concludes our evening.